Then we have portraiture, or the busts of the early empire. Now, we've talked about busts already in terms of the Republic, but some of the ideas will change. And as we saw with the introduction of the statue of Augustus, things had changed already. So we're kind of going back and forth between different styles here. And we start with the portrait of Vespasian. Now, Vespasian is the emperor who follows Nero. He's a major general, very well-known and well-respected figure in Rome at the time. And he reinstates these ideas of verism, although he's not going to be as extreme. So you can see on the left the Republican version of verism, which is quite strong. We can see that sense of age. When we get to Vespasian, we get a sense of age, but it's age with strength. He doesn't want to show himself as an old man as such. He wants to show himself wise yet strong, because he is still an emperor after all. Also, we see all people depicted. We see a lot of Roman busts. Now, of course, you're going to have more of the emperor because they're spread through the empire for a number of different reasons. And when we look at the female bust, here's a portrait of a Flavian woman. And what we see is their idea of beauty at the time. And a couple of things to note. This is not the first time that we've seen the elongated neck. We've seen that from the Greeks. We've seen it elsewhere. And the elongated neck is supposed to give a sense of grace. We also have this very detailed hair. And that hair is, they're using a drill to drill out those curls to make them look more realistic. And then they're using a series of drill holes and a little bit of chiseling to create the spaces in between. And we get a strong sense of exactly what the current style at the time was. And these busts would have been painted just like all the other statuary at the time. So it's really a remarkable piece. And a lot of these Flavian busts are very realistic when it comes to women, because they're not really idealizing the female form. Remember, the Romans aren't really idealizing the male form either. They're adding a sense of age. Well, women, you don't want to add a sense of age, or at least the Romans don't want to. So we get this very realistic portrait of the most glamorous women in the empire. Which brings us to the Arch of Titus. Now, Titus is the son of Vespasian. And Titus is famous for ending the conflict in Jerusalem, the first Jewish revolt, pretty much by slaughtering the entire population of Jerusalem. But he does become emperor for a short time, and this arch is actually built by his younger brother, Domitian. Now, these arches are triumphal arches. Their purpose is to remember a major victory, and Rome is littered with them. They're all over the place. They were built for many of the emperors, but before that in the Republic, they were generally built for generals who had won incredible victories. By the time we get to the empire, apart from Titus and a couple of others, usually they're there to stoke the emperor's ego more than anything else. And here what we see is engaged columns. So these Greek, in this case, a mix of Ionic and Corinthian engaged columns. We see the Roman arch. The superstructure underneath all of this is concrete, and then it's lined in marble. Again, almost everything the Romans do is concrete at its base. And we have this dedicatory inscription at the top, basically saying the Senate and the people of Rome are dedicating this arch to Titus because of his victory. And what we're going to be looking at is inside, there's a panel on either side on the inside of this arch. And it looks something like this, and actually, here they are. We see the spoils of Jerusalem and the triumph of Titus. Now, the spoils of Jerusalem, we see them bringing back, was clearly a menorah, and this is carved into a piece of limestone or marble. And it's very detailed. Basically, the idea is Titus would have come back and there would have been a parade where they would have paraded the spoils of war through the city, ultimately for all of it to be melted down and turned into gold coins to enrich the Roman Empire. And here we see those items coming back. The menorah tells us that this is clearly something coming back from Jerusalem. Now, moving to the right, the triumph of Titus is that parade, but now we're seeing Titus in the chariot. Before him are the prisoners of war that he's bringing back. Of course, that's very important because these people become slaves. And Titus has this form behind him. This is actually winged victory, but winged victory is in a very specific position. There was a tradition in Rome that there would be a person standing behind the general who would remind him, "You are not a god, you are but a man." Reminding him of his mortality, reminding him that he wasn't, this was a great victory, but don't look on this with more esteem than you should. In terms of sculpture, this is really quite intriguing because we have these incredible three-dimensional figures almost fully in the round in the foreground. But as we move back, you'll notice that we have figures that are barely etched in. This is atmospheric perspective. This is something that we tend to credit to Donatello and other Ninja Turtles during the Renaissance. This is not something we think of as Roman, yet that's exactly what they're doing. Because remember, with atmospheric perspective, as things move further back, you lose contrast and detail. In sculpture, that means you have very three-dimensional forms in the front. As you move back, you simply etch in the lines. So you add a lot less detail, making it fall back further. It's really a spectacular showing of Roman sculpture, Roman relief sculpture at the time.